Okay, we're ready.
Good job.
Hey, thanks. All right, your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, May 21st is moments away. But before we get into that, we would like to thank the following unions for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. First up, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A big thank you to those unions once again for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. What's so funny?
Just fired up, boy.
The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. Now. There we go. It is Tuesday, May 21st, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, hosts of Humanity in the Headlines, Atiba Buchanan and David Seaton will join us. We welcome Stephanie Zimmerman of the Chicago Sun-Times, and making his Ben Joravsky Show debut, host of the Fight podcast. Ben, please do not get in a fight with our guest. Sergio Vicente. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this We Shall See Tuesday. And here's why. Great weekend, man. I had a great... You have a good weekend, D?
Yeah. 2 days ago. It was great.
That's why I was laughing. I was preparing for that exchange. I knew it already. He was going to say, get out of business.
Weekend's long gone. It's Tuesday.
I'm going to just say a couple things. Good news and bad news about the weekend. The good news is I watched Wayne's World, saw it again after 20 years or whatever. Bad news, it's not that good.
No.
Sorry, Wayne and Garth or whatever.
The second one's real good.
All right, I'm going to watch the second one. I have it on my queue. I put it back on my queue. I'm the only person in America who still watches movies through those little discs that Netflix sends in the mail. Trying to relive the days where you could go get to video stores, D. I'm going back in time, all right? Anyway, then I woke up and I got down to business. Yes, indeed. I went to Lori's inauguration, all right? Yeah, I went there. Now, there are two reasons I went, D. Number one, I wanted to make sure that a certain mayor, Mayor Rahm, really was leaving office, okay? I had my doubts. I thought it was going to be like that character. Ever see Dangerous Liaison where the lady, the crazy lady, I think it was Glenn Close, played the crazy lady who was chasing Michael Douglas, who deserved it because he was kind of, selfish. Anyway, don't want to give away the whole plot. But at the very end, you think she's dead and she's in the bathtub, but she comes out of the bathtub. I thought Rahm would be like that. He'd come out of the bathtub. I'm not leaving. I'm sticking around. Good news, folks. He left. Lori Lightfoot was sworn in, and no more Rahm as mayor of the city of Chicago. That weeping sound? Tom McNamee, my good friend of the Sun-Times. I like him. Anyway, Tom and I didn't see eye to eye in the Rahm reign. The other reason I went to the inauguration is because Maya made me. Maya Dumaxova, my partner in crime at the Chicago Reader. She was very insistent that I go, and I know what you're thinking, folks. You're thinking, but Ben, why wouldn't you go? But Ben, you're utterly obsessed with Chicago politics. You live, eat, and breathe the stuff. At this point, you are one of the only 10 people in the city of Chicago who can recite from memory every single member of the Chicago City Council. In fact, you saw this. Joanna Klonsky was in the studio the other day. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. After the show when you guys were trying to list all the aldermen. Like, okay, nerds. It's Friday. Can we go home, please? What about Ward 33?
What we were doing was going through every single ward, alderman by alderman, to see who we thought would vote with Lori Lightfoot on the council reorganization. Number one, first ward, Daniel Espada. Number two, Brian I Love Tiff Hopkins. Number three, Pat Quinn, etc., etc.
As we're trying to go home on Friday. All right, guys, wrap it up.
Dennis, I got an active social life. I got to get home, all right? Nope. Number 4, Sophia King. Number 5, Leslie Harrison. Anyway.
Huge dorks, guys.
So anyway, yeah, I love Chicago politics, and the inauguration of a new mayor is a great day for a Chicago political geek, so of course I'm going to show up. But on the other hand, Good God, I was at an early hour. Why couldn't she have the inauguration like 2 in the afternoon, a convenient hour for a guy like me, huh, D? I'm like, man, I got those rock star hours. I'm up late. I get up. By the way, there was an article in the Tribune. I don't know if you saw this, D. You want to know if you're smart?
Oh, you see that listener's newspaper? Or see that newspaper listeners?
One of the signs of being smart, according to this article in the Tribune, you don't get up early. All right, huh? I'm a genius. You don't get up early if that's the only qualification. Anyway, conversation went a little like this. Maya told me, Ben, meet me at 9:30 at 22nd and Michigan. Me, that's so early. Maya, Ben, okay, I'll go. Anyway, folks, I'm really glad I went. I thought it was a great speech. We'll be talking about it all day today, what Lori Lightfoot had to say. It was very entertaining, if nothing else. They put me in press row. I saw all the greats, all the legendary. Fran Spielman was there. Your good friend Mike Flannery was there.
Oh, hey.
Marianne Ahern was there. Anyway, guess who else was there? My old poker-playing friend from Chicago Crane's Business. Greg, you got to know when to hold him, know when to fold him. Hines, all right? Now, here's something you should know about Greg Hines and me. We have an essential disagreement on a certain program called TIFs. All right? I oppose the way TIFs are allocated in the city of Chicago. I think it's unfair that so much of our property tax dollars goes to wealthy neighborhoods that don't really need the assistance, and it leaves out areas for which the program was intended that are getting shortchanged. Greg has a different point of view as a political reporter for the leading business publication in the city of Chicago. He's more like, I love the TIF program. More money for rich people. Anyway, something you should know, D, the inauguration was held at the Wintrust Arena in the South Loop, otherwise known as the DePaul Basketball Arena. The arena was intentional. It was supposed to be built with TIF dollars. It's complicated what happened, but TIF dollars were earmarked for that project originally. I opposed that deal. I pretty much oppose any downtown TIF deal. Greg Hines, on the other hand, supported that deal. Greg pretty much supports every downtown TIF deals. When it comes to downtown TIF deals, Greg is a little like that Robert Duvall character in Apocalypse Now. I love the smell of TIFs in the morning. You ever see that movie, D? Anyway, so, so we're sitting there, and Greg comes right up to me and starts trash talking me because he always wins when it comes to TIF battles, you know? I'm like, don't approve this, city council. Greg's like, approve this, city council. And the city council approves it. Okay? So, you know, it's sort of like rooting for the Golden State Warriors. It's not hard to be a winner when you go with the most powerful force.
Sounds like Greg Hines is like your arch enemy.
I love Greg Hines. We used to play poker together. I didn't tell you that?
Yeah.
Way back when in the 80s?
You never told me.
Oh, he was a hell of a poker player. Anyway, so he comes up to me and goes, hey, Ben, isn't this ironic that they're having the inauguration here? And I go, yeah, I know. Hey, Ben, isn't it true that you were against the TIF deal? Yeah. Don't you think that's ironic? He was a little like the Newman character in Seinfeld,
Newman.
You know? Anyway, Greg, so I told him, look, it's a new day. It's a new age. We have a reform mayor, Greg. All right, Lori Lightfoot. No more TIF deals for well-connected developers and upscale gentrifying neighborhoods that don't need the money to begin with. You watch. It's a new day. And Greg just like, we shall see. For once, there's something that Greg Hines and I agree in when it comes to TIFs. We shall see. We got a great show today, everybody. T-Boo Buchanan will be here with David Seaton, the co-host of Humanity in the Headlines. We'll be talking Lori's inauguration. We'll be talking Trump. We'll be talking the Democratic candidates for president. A lot of political talk with them. Stephanie Zimmerman will be here at about 2 o'clock. Man, did she write a real kick-ass investigative story in the Sunday Tribune. Sun-Times. There it is. Sunday Sun-Times. It's all about how much you pay more for car insurance if you're a renter, if you're a woman, if you don't have a professional job. She breaks it down. Great investigation. You want to know? Look at your pocketbooks, folks. You're paying more than you have to. Stephanie Zimmerman will explain it all. And then 2:30 I cannot wait. Sergio Vicente, a mixed martial arts fighter, and the host of the Fight podcast, coming in and talk politics. And what was the former mayor, the governor of Jesse Ventura? He's got a little Jesse Ventura in him.
It's a conspiracy. Love Jesse Ventura.
Yeah, well, he's Minnesota. Meet Sergio. He's got a little, he's very political and
Golf for Tonkin.
Yeah, you can. That sort of sounds like your other. What's that other dude?
Alex Jones.
Yeah, it's your Alex Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the document. That's Alex Jones.
Oh, okay.
That's your turn. Golf for Tonkin.
I guess there's
conspiracy.
Yeah, there's a bit of a distinction there. Anyway, plenty of political talk, local talk, national talk, all kinds of political talk. But before we do any of that, the doctor has the news.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dennis. How's it going? Not a doctor. Hold on, I got an email I got to respond to. Yep. Okay, Greg Hines canceled. We had him booked for an interview. He just canceled. Way to go, Ben. We'll never get that Hines interview.
Greg, you got to know when to hold him, know when to fold him high.
You're not helping.
Oh, sorry.
Trying to get him booked on the show. He keeps canceling.
Did I tell you he was a great poker player?
Please stop. All right. It's the middle of the day. Chicago has a new mayor. And, Ben, I got a feeling that most of the people listening to this would really like to hear more of your take on Monday's inauguration of Mayor Lori Lightfoot ASAP. I mean, after all, you were there. But first, we must briefly discuss the national news happening this afternoon. And I'll be as brief as I can with today's national news. Former White House counsel Don McGahn was subpoenaed to testify before the House Judiciary Committee today, but McGahn took the advice given to him by one President Donald Trump and refused to appear. Break out the bucket of chicken. The hearing has been adjourned, and McGahn is expected to be held in contempt over his refusal to testify. In other news, today Donald Trump's attorneys are appealing a ruling that his accounting firm must turn over his financial records. Trump lawyers filed a notice of appeal today in D.C. District Court. Meanwhile, we got House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff bringing up the I word again. He said the case for impeaching Donald Trump, quote, gets stronger the more they stonewall, which in turn has Democratic House Speaker and Ben Joravsky's no longer secret crush, Nancy Pelosi, in a bit of a jam. Yeah. She's been advocating for no Trump impeachment, so she will meet Wednesday with the entire Democratic caucus to discuss a game plan moving forward. Ben Joravsky, I hate to steal the big question from this week's Pelosi party you're hosting, but is it time for the Speaker to advocate for impeaching the President of the United States?
I don't. That is a great question. And, Nancy Pelosi has been playing the good cop as opposed to Adam Schiff and the rest of the Democrats bad cops. So they're like, we want the documents.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the documents. There's fluoride in the water. I repeat, fluoride in the water. We'll be right back.
That's the best Alex Jones.
Right now, get your InfoWars water filtration system. You heard him. There's fluoride in that water.
Alex Jones is awesome. It makes me crack up. I hear it all the time, by the way, folks. We're on the train going home. Hey, let me do my Alex Jones. But anyway, yes, Nancy Pelosi's playing the good cop to the bad cop that the rest of the Democrats are playing. And she's saying, well, don't want to push too fast on impeachment. We don't want to get it too far ahead of people, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And the rest of the Democrats are like, impeach him. So at some point, I believe that Nancy Pelosi will have to drop the good cop approach. We'll see what Atiba has to say about this, and David Seaton. They're coming in to talk about this strategy. Most of the Democrats I know want to impeach and impeach now, D. But then I hang around with a lefty crowd. So I've got to know, I'm going to take a field trip down to the 618, see what folks down there are saying, all right?
I don't know.
See if they're really into the impeachment thing. But listen, Donald Trump is in many ways trying to force the Dems to go strong, go hard with the impeachment thing. We'll see how long Nancy Pelosi can hold out with this. I don't know. We got, the good cop strategy.
Now, of course, we'll keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along, blah, blah, yada, yada. Okay, Lori Lightfoot.
I stand here today, inaugurated as Chicago's first black woman mayor and first openly gay mayor.
Yes, Monday at Wintrust Arena in the South Loop, history was made as Lori Lightfoot was sworn in as Chicago's first black female mayor, as well as Chicago's first openly gay mayor. Meaning, yes, Rahm Emanuel is no longer in charge. Ben Joravsky had a party last night. Oh, he was so happy. Like, he called me, D, man, he's gone, finally. Like, dude, it's 1 a.m. I'm trying to sleep. What are you doing? Oh, he's gone. But our very own Ben Joravsky was at the inauguration. So before we get to the audio I have here, Ben, give us your report. How was it? What was the overall vibe like? Oh, and hey, dude, how come you didn't invite me? I was sitting there waiting.
First of all, it was lucky that I got an invitation.
Oh, okay.
Maya was the one, as I said, who set it up, insisted that I go there, met me at the corner to make sure I didn't run away at the last minute, ushered me in. We sat in press row, as I said. By the way, guess for 10 trivia points, who did I sit next to?
Who did you sit next to?
The Marine, Antonio. Salute when you say that name.
Bring up that station you got fired from again. Make it awkward. It's awesome.
The brains of that station. It was happened to be sitting next to me. I had a grand old time sitting next to him. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was for political junkies. It was a great thing. There was a spirit. It was very of Harold Washington. I like when I think you may be playing that tape, but when she invoked Harold Washington, old timers like me. Just the fact that we had a mayor of the city of Chicago who had invoked the spirit of Harold Washington, who came into office determined to change the way we do things, the unfairness with which we distribute services, jobs, everything else in the city. The fact that you invoked him, made me feel good, filled with pride. And so I'm really optimistic for once in my life. Usually I'm the jaded.
There we go.
Give me about a week, D. Well, if that, all right? But because my hopes are generally crushed. But that vibe, that just general vibe that things are going to change in Chicago, that Lori Lightfoot wants to change things in Chicago, fired me up. So I was excited on that level.
We got a question on the live stream chat. This comes from Supervisor Clinical. Boy, these people on our chat. Yeah. I guess Jim Jones or somebody normal is going to okay, Supervisor Clinical asks, since you were at the inauguration, Ben, was Willie, whoever I pick will be the next mayor, Wilson at the inauguration?
I did not see Wilson. I didn't see Ricky Hendon there. By the way, Ricky Hendon on interview, let's plug that one from about a week ago. It was a great interview, very classic interview with Ricky Hendon. Did not see Willie Wilson. That doesn't mean he was. Okay, once again, I was in the press row. I was kind of in the back. They put the press way in the back. Hey, we're not going to waste any good seats on you guys.
Oh, Joravsky? Oh, throw him in the back.
Surprised they didn't put us in the parking lot.
No kidding.
But anyway, so I did not see. I saw Del Marie Cobb was there. Saw Double D. Doris Davenport was there. A lot of friends of the show.
I watched it on YouTube and I saw Doris Davenport.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, Doris.
Yeah, there she was. Anyway, but did not see Willie Wilson.
Watched it on YouTube, I said.
Okay.
You didn't invite me. That's what I'm trying to prove.
Oh, no, I didn't know where you were going with that.
And
it's not like I had the guest list, okay? I was lucky to get an invitation myself.
And I listened to it on WBBM, although that was nice. I got traffic and weather on the 8s. That was
Did they interrupt the speech code, traffic and weather on the 1s?
It's the 8s.
Oh, is it the 8s? I thought it was the 1s.
You don't do it at 1 after, at 8.
Oh, I did not know. I thought it was the 1s.
Big BBM fan he is, huh?
Oh, they drive me crazy. Way too much traffic. Okay, nobody needs everybody's got the app. What's that thing called, D?
An app?
No, it's the traffic app. Everybody has that. You don't need all the traffic.
Oh, Waze?
Yes, Waze. Thank you. Anyway, perfect guy to give advice to radio stations. Guy got fired by one.
Man on the 1s. No, it's the 8.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so let's talk about the inauguration speech, all right? There were motivational moments, like when Mayor Lightfoot talked about her upbringing.
As I stand here today, I can't help but think about where I came from. Children who look like me and come from families like mine shouldn't have to beat the odds to get education, pursue their passions, or build a family.
Emotional moments, like when she talked about her mother.
There's one person that you are about to meet who laid the foundation for everything that I am today. She's my role model, my champion, a woman on whose dreams and high expectations propelled me through life, my mother, Lightfoot.
And yes, our favorite awkward moments, like when she thanked the guy who doesn't have to go home but has to get the hell out of office, former Mayor Rahm Emanuel, along with his wife, Amy.
I thank Mayor Emanuel for his dedication and service to this city, which was exemplified by the attention and time that he and his staff devoted to making this transition as smooth as possible. And I also commend Amy Rule for her contributions to the city. Join me in wishing them both well as they head off into the next chapter of their lives.
This is when Ben was just standing up, jumping up and down. Man, I love him. No, you can't see it, but that's how Rahm's standing there waving like a weirdo.
Yeah. I got to tell you, T, it's so funny because Lori it's these moments in politics where the victor thanks and the person she essentially vanquished. And yes, Rahm did not run, was not officially vanquished by Lori Lightfoot because he chickened out. He didn't run for re-election. He saw the same polls that everybody else saw, and that he was getting swamped, that finally the black community had turned against him. Should never have voted for him in 2015, in my humble opinion, but whatever. They were drinking that Obama Kool-Aid back in 2015, and so he decided not to run for re-election. So, but, you know, that's how you do it in politics. You have to just sort of pretend as though, well, that fight was then, now we're now, we've all made up, and so, you know, you say nice things about the person you vanquished. But so I was not one of the people standing and cheering when she did the Rahm thing. No, but there was this hilarious caption. Fran Spielman noted it in today's Bright One, and I saw it too, and I wrote about it in the Reader. The person who's doing the captioning, I don't know how they do the captioning that goes on the overhead board, but instead of calling him Mayor Rahm, I think they said don't remember Mayor Rahm.
Whoa.
Yeah. Anyway, people are already trying to forget that he was our mayor of the city of Chicago.
Hire Ben Joravsky for your next captioning thing you need. Not big on captioning.
I didn't have anything to do with the caption, although, you know, I applauded it. Like everybody in press row, you sit with press row, they're so jaded and cynical, by the way. You're not allowed to cheer when you're in the press row. Did you know that, D?
No, I did not.
I'm
you
like,
didn't invite me.
Yeah, okay. You know, I'm like usually the kind of guy that talks to a movie, you know, like don't go there. Don't go into the basement. Anyway, that kind of guy. So when I'm listening to the speeches, you know, like when Rahm's talking, I'm like, oh, God, give me a break. Oh, my God, are you falling for this? And the other reporter's like, Ben, this is press row, okay? You don't talk in press row.
Get this guy in the parking lot.
Oh, God. Then when Lori says something good that I like, yeah. So anyway, yeah, the guys in press, but even the guys in press row, as jaded as they are, got a big kick out of the caption. Hey, look at the caption. They all pointed at the caption. They don't like Rahm any more than I do. They just don't come out and say it.
So there was the emotional, motivational, awkward moments, but then things got interesting.
For years, they've said Chicago ain't ready for reform. Well, get ready, because reform is here. I campaigned on change, you voted for change, and I plan to deliver change to our government. That means restoring trust in our city's government and finally bringing some real integrity to the way this city works.
When discussing reform in the city of Chicago and while calling out, let's face it, the city council member who was currently indicted for abusing his power, Alderman Ed Burke, this is the moment where a particular group in the room got very quiet all of a sudden. Lightfoot addressed ending aldermanic prerogative.
Later this afternoon, I will sign an executive order to end the worst abuses of the so-called aldermanic privilege. This does not mean that our aldermen won't have power in their communities. Of course they will. And it does not mean that our aldermen will not be able to make sure that the street lights are working or the parking signs are in the right place or any of the thousands of good things that they do for people every day. It simply means this. It means ending their unilateral, unchecked control over every single thing that goes on in their wards. Aldermen will have a voice, but not a veto. It's the time for a new era of trust between the people of Chicago and the government that serves them.
Yeah, city council members weren't jumping for joy.
All right, let's break that one down. That's the great moment where Mayor Lori Lightfoot doubled down on her promise to get rid of aldermanic privilege, aldermanic prerogative. You know what my position on this thing. I think it's a phony, fraudulent issue. There's far more important issues that the city must face. Or already, I'm now already critical of the Lord. It didn't take long, but it was a great dramatic moment yesterday, no doubt about it. Lori Lightfoot turned. I don't know if you saw this, Dee, if you were watching it, or if you just listened, but it was like this moment where she turned and confronted the city council. The aldermen were sitting behind her on the stage. They had a better seat than I did, by the way. Did I mention I was way in press row, which is like the parking lot? And they were right behind the mayor when she gave the speech. She turned around and looked at him. It was like that moment when a fighter's in the ring. You know how they go? They look each other in the eye. You know, Mike Tyson. By the way, if I was ever in a ring with Mike Tyson, I would get out of there. Anyway, she like looked him in the eye. People told me that that was totally improv at the moment, that she didn't practice it. Well, who knows? But anyway, she looked him in the eye and said it directly, and the crowd went crazy. People in the city of Chicago, it's not the first time that I'm not in the mainstream of the city. People in the city of Chicago have decided that alderman prerogative is an important issue in the city. I think that aldermen should have a say on zoning matters. I think the aldermen should be the ones who lead public hearings on these things. I would rather have my locally elected official be the one who oversees what goes on in my ward than put it in the hands of a nameless, faceless bureaucrat in City Hall. I think that of all the things that Lori Lightfoot is promising to do, this is the easiest, because essentially she's not taking any power away from herself. She's taking power away from aldermen. Oh, well, they're giving more power to herself. So I don't think this is an important issue, but again, obviously, I am in the minority on this one, and the people went nuts. They started cheering, and the alderman just sat there, like you said, steam coming out of the air. But what can you do? I mean, the Chicago City Council, under Mayor Rahm, let's not forget that part of the equation, put Ed Burke in a position of power, running the Finance Committee, approving every single TIF deal, every single contract, and every single downtown development deal. And so he was the man, and meanwhile he's running a property tax appeal business that's taking business from many of the same people who are turning to the city with their hands out. So yes, he made the city council look bad, and the city council went along with it, so they're going to have to pay for the repercussions. Natural consequences, young Dennis. I know you learned that growing up in Alton. Natural consequences.
Yeah, way to go, Ed Burke. Way to pee in the punch bowl. All right, now just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on in Chicago. Yes, it is official. Lori Lightfoot is mayor of Chicago.
For years, they've said Chicago ain't ready for reform. Well, get ready, because reform is here.
And now you'll have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is new?
Right. Chicago ain't ready for reform. Well, I'll tell you something, D. I'll tell you who is ready for reform. We are on the Ben Joravsky Show. We got Atiba Buchanan and David Seaton on deck. They're going to come on. I'm going to tell you something that Atiba thinks.
Okay.
David thinks. And Leah, the show editor. They all agree. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Get ready, folks. Atiba and David are coming on after this. Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed, we are live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Atiba Buchanan has become a regular in this show. This is his third appearance.
Yes, sir.
And now this time you did not come solo, Atiba.
That's right.
And so I'll let you introduce to our listeners and our viewers, by the way,
yes.
your guest or our new guest. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Joining me today is my man, my confidant, my pal, my friend, my partner in crime, if you will, Mr. David Seaton. He is my co-host on my podcast, Humanity in the Headlines.
All right. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure. Been listening to you for a long time.
Yeah, that just means I'm old. Anyway, yeah, in the past, David, you were working. I don't think you could make it here at the time, so it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
In the show. Just briefly about yourself. We all know that Atiba is, and I say this with full, like a compliment, is a political geek of the highest order. He's really passionate about his politics, follows it, knows it. I can see a fellow geek. You know, it's like looking in the mirror when I look at him. Are you of the geekish persuasion as well?
I am probably just as much of a geek as both of you, yes. Definitely. I grew up in the west suburbs of Chicago all my life, so I'm born and bred. I'm very familiar with Chicago politics, so I'm looking forward to getting into this
Proviso West High School.
Proviso West High School,
Come on.
Correct.
How did I know that?
Yes, we're both the same class.
Do we know this? Do we have this conversation already?
No,
You're
no.
from Proviso West?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we talked about that.
Oh, okay. I can't remember.
He and I have been
anything.
friends since 8th grade.
Seventh or eighth grade, yes.
Yeah, so we've been.
So were you the kind of kids in 8th grade that actually followed politics?
I wasn't.
I was. I watched the Iran-Contra hearings in the 80s when I was probably, what, I don't want to tell everyone my age.
That's all right. You're younger than me. It's all good.
But no, I've been following politics my whole life.
So you guys, did you follow, let's see, so if you follow Iran-Contra, were you following Anita Hill?
I was, correct.
And now, you know what, that's mostly what I talk about with Atiba is national politics, Trump. But let's just start off. I mean, let's just start briefly, your thoughts, your memories, when you think about the Anita Hill hearings. You watched it as a kid where Biden is back in the headlines. He was, of course, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
That's a canard. Most of the time, what I see today is that we make the mistake of trying to judge something that happened in the past with hindsight. It's unfair to hold Joe Biden accountable for something he did 30 years ago using the perspective that we have today. Having said that, I do remember in the Anita Hill hearings when Clarence Thomas said this is a high-tech lynching. That's the one thing that I always remember about that. And given that he was being nominated after Thurgood Marshall died, I just thought that he was just playing. That he just did that because he was the only black guy in the room, and he knew that it would play, and he was a Republican. So I never really have been a fan of him.
And he's the only person that can get away with saying it.
Exactly. I've never been a fan.
You know what? I'm so glad you guys say this. I go on and on about the Anita Hill hearings. But the point I hammer home is that the Republicans did a very good job, and this is where I blame Biden. The Republicans did a very good job of manipulating absolutely everything to guarantee the nominee, the confirmation of Clarence Thomas. And again, he was being nominated to replace a giant of civil rights law. Perhaps the greatest civil rights lawyer this country has ever produced. And he himself is anti-everything that Thurgood Marshall stood for, including affirmative action. And so for him, it still gets
the irony that he is where he is because of affirmative action, and then he wants to dismantle it after he's on the Supreme Court is always going to be a historical irony.
I can't get over it. How many years ago is that, David? I still can't get over it. And the high-tech lynching, it's like, I don't want to be a black person judged by, for being black until it's to my advantage to be judged for being black. And then you're being mean to me, liberals. I mean,
well, Clarence Thomas is of the worst order in terms of the shoes that he was filling. And I mean, we could get really deep into just the hypocrisy generally of the Republican ideology, and he is just emblematic of that. Like I said, on being on the Supreme Court, it was just a slap in the face to African Americans, the civil rights movement, and minorities all over the country.
And that's before we got into the sexual harassment.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's
exactly.
even before.
It doesn't even include that.
All right. Well, let me ask you this then. The Biden question that I phrase from that, there's two Biden issues you can phrase. One is how he was unfair to Anita Hill, which probably has the most resonance today politically. Atiba. And then the second issue is the strategy that Joe Biden followed, and his general attitude toward Republicans is that we can work with them. I'm going to be as conciliatory as I can be. I'm going to compromise with them. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's what he did throughout the whole hearing. If you imagine if it was reversed, imagine if the Republicans were in control and it was an outspoken liberal nominee.
Sure.
Who was out. How would the Republicans have treated him?
Well, we all know the answer to that. However, to David's point, I will say this. In 94 and 91, and because that's what we're talking about here, the early 90s, bipartisanship wasn't necessarily the bad word that it is today. That is pre-Fox News. That is pre-Fox where we are today by these divisive politics. So for him to behave that way in 91 is kind of understandable because, again, Republicans and Democrats did get things done collectively and together. It is not the same environment that we have now, this tribalism that we see today. So to David's point, yes, it would be unfair to look at him through the lens of today for what happened in 91, because if we're being honest, it was a different environment in 91 and 92 and 93 and 94. So with that said, Republicans, the one consistent thing through that is their hypocrisy. That wouldn't have changed because it's the early 90s. But I think now we can finally get to a point that as Democrats, we can openly say we just need to outvote them and then put our agenda through, because we know at this point we cannot work with them.
And the Republicans have done a very good job of redefining the political continuum. If you're going to look at the political continuum as, you know, far left and far right, they've moved what used to be the center, they've moved it to center right. And now if you're someone who's on the left, they can call you a radical and call you extreme, when really you're just on the left. That
would have been centrist.
Exactly. You know, so again, even with the Anita Hill hearing, again, we didn't have the Me Too movement. I mean, you have to remember that, you know, going back, 40 years almost, I mean, a lot of the things that we're dealing with today, as far as the Me Too movement and women's rights and gay rights and a lot of the other issues that are on the table, were nowhere near being considered back then. So that was par for the course to have a conversation with a woman who is accusing a Supreme Court justice that was very highly revered and respected just by being nominated to his position, and say, how dare you come in and besmirch the good name of this nominee from George H. Walker Bush going to the Supreme Court. You know, you had all this pomp and circumstance where people were respecting the process and the office, and to Atiba's point, you know, the tribalism that we have today, it has eviscerated all of those norms and things that we used to hold dear.
All right. Well, yes, it was a different time politically, but Joe Biden, back to the Biden issue, it's almost as though he wants to bring those days back. I'm not talking about bringing back the days where you nominate a right-winger like Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. I'm talking about bringing back the days, if they even existed ever, by the way, of bipartisanship, working across the aisle. That's what he's almost as though he's campaigning as though if he defeats Trump, those days will return. Atiba, do you think that is naive of him to say that, or do you think it's a possibility that we can return to those days?
It'd be completely naive, and I don't say that just based on a feeling. Mitch McConnell had said so. He said, if we lose the White House in 2020, I'm still the head of the Senate, and I'm going to. He said, I think, what was the phrase he said? Call me the Grim Reaper. He's not allowing anything to the floor. So if that's what you're working with, and that's very similar to his comments when Obama was initially won the presidency. What did he say? We're going to make him a one-term president. He barely sat down on the Oval Office, the chair, to figure out what he's going to do before they figured out that whatever Obama put up, they weren't going to approve it, even if it were things that they agreed with. So that dynamic hasn't changed, and they're not going to change their position because it's Joe Biden. Those days are long gone. Again, as Democrats, we have to be bold enough to admit that we're not going to win Trump voters, that we're not going to win people like Mitch McConnell. We have to outvote them, outnumber them, and then apply our agenda. And I'm sure in the hindsight, President Obama would admit the same thing, That's the biggest fault of his first 2 years of his presidency, was trying to do everything by the book.
Well, I think that the biggest mistake that we have is just a general lack of understanding of basic civics in our country today. The Republicans did a very good job during the Reagan years of branding the Reagan tax cuts. When if anyone, and the three of us know this, and anyone listening who understands civics knows, tax cuts are not passed by the president; they're passed by the Congress. So, and that's an important distinction to make, because when we get so distracted about who is in the White House, we forget that the only purpose of the executive branch is to execute the laws that are passed by Congress. And the Republicans have done a very good job of getting us to concentrate on the president when we really should be concentrating on a 50 state strategy to take over the Congress. Because to your point, if Mitch McConnell says, you put a Democrat in 1600 Pennsylvania if you want to, all I'm going to do is just disrupt and just stand in the person's way, that reinforces that he's telling you right there, the power is not in the presidency, the power is here. Yeah. Because I can keep this one job out, as long as I keep 51 people on my team in this chamber, I can stop anything, or I can let anything move forward. And that's the thing that we've got to rediscover as Democrats. We need to have a 50-state strategy to take and hold the Congress, like we did for 40 years. But after World War II, the Democrats were in charge of Congress for decades, and it wasn't until the right wing and the right wing echo chamber and Fox News and all of those people that, and the Rush Limbaughs, they were able to galvanize the guy who's driving in his car every day, listening to this claptrap and getting brainwashed, and they understand, they understood, if we get Trump in, we can take back Roe versus Wade. This has been a multi-decade strategy. They play the long game. Too often, Democrats play a short game just for immediate gains, and they don't look at the long game.
Well, to both your points, Democrats have allowed Republicans to play the long game by going, as Obama did it, Biden did it in '91, pretending as though that there's a bipartisanship that existed when they knew it didn't exist. And when I look back at the Obama years and the Clinton years, the notion that the Democrats kind of, the mainstream Democrats sort of demonize, in a way, their left bank, their left side of the party, if you follow what I'm saying. They always try to distinguish themselves from the left. You know what I mean? Like, well, people on the left say X, Y, Z. In fact, Biden, at that speech that he gave in the 90s, I don't know if you've seen that speech, where he's talking about the crime bill, Biden said, there are some liberal members of my party who think that you should take into consideration poverty when it comes to crime, but I'm just worried about the criminal. In other words, they kind of demonized him. I can't imagine a Republican ever demonizing the right wing, and the right wing took over and took the agenda. But I'm just wondering, will the Democrats ever stop this? How do I put this? This effort to try to move right, as though there is some kind of consensus, and sort of leave them behind the left wing of their party. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a tough pill to swallow, but we don't want to swallow it. I see all these stories on MSNBC and CNN where they keep talking to Trump voters that are now dissatisfied with the president because of his tariffs or because of whatever he's done that's now impacting them personally. But the truth of the matter is, they'll still vote for him. Stop trying to win over those people. We're not going to win them over. Democrats would be well better served focusing on their base, focusing on getting rid of voter suppression, focusing on bringing out women voters, and most of all, focusing on bringing out young voters. And if they focused on that, again, Hillary Clinton won by 3 million votes. We would continue to win at least the presidency for the foreseeable future. There's a danger there. Especially and when you bring up the crime bill, and I remember Atiba and I had several shows about this, and when it came down to Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and people who are Bernie fans were saying, yeah, Hillary Clinton, remember, she was the one that said super predator, and she was the one about the crime bill, blah, blah, but she was the first lady. She didn't have a vote. She didn't have a vote. She was out there espousing what was at the time
accepted dogma about how to deal with inner city violence and drug use. The one thing that the other thing that the Republican Party does have to their advantage that the left does not have is that because they are commingled with the Christian right, they have an automatic 40 to 60 million person voting block as long as they say no abortion, guns for everyone. You know, they've got a couple of issues that they can just say those three issues. And they've been saying it for 30, 40 years. Guns, gays, and God. As long as they say those three things, that they've got a 40 to 60 million person block that is going to come out and vote for whomever the nominee is. We don't have that galvanizing issue on the left. So, and just the way the left work, I mean, people who are left-minded their brains just work differently. So we're not sheeple like they are on the right.
What do you mean their brains work differently?
I mean, there's been a lot of study, and we've talked about this on our show. There's been a lot of study that people who are right wing or who tend to be more conservative, just the way their brains are wired, that there's a correlation between being a right winger and being more religious. And when you tend to be more religious, you know, the guy standing up there just says, "This is this week's sermon. God said do this, so do it." That's how these right-wing evangelical pastors can get up there and say, "God wants you to vote for Trump, and if you don't vote, if Trump gets impeached, you know what that one minister was saying, if Trump gets impeached, there's going to be a civil war in this country."
Was that Graham who said that?
I think so.
Yeah.
You know,
Billy's son.
But on the left, you know, just the way that our brains are wired, we tend to be more liberal. We tend to be more open. We tend to be more accepting. And that way, and so you can't get liberal-minded people around one galvanizing issue, because on the left, someone will say climate change, someone will say voter suppression, someone will say, you know, a choice for women, someone will, you know, so you know, but I do believe at the end of the day that the left is more representative of a 21st century America. All you have to do is just look at the senators, and they're all white men with the exception of 2 or 3 white women.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. In other words, people of the left essentially are more open-minded and less likely to fall in line. That old line about Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. That's what you're getting at. I'm now going to introduce you to what I call the Dr. D theory of the upcoming election. That's Dennis over there, the good-looking young man. How's it going, guys? Dr. D has said to me many times that, in his humble opinion, if the Democratic candidate for president of the United States, without any apology, strongly endorses and promises to do absolutely everything he or she can to advance, create adopt a national health plan, like a Medicare for all. Everybody in this country is going to get health care plan. No doubt about it. No complicated. You got to sign up here, and you're going to pay X amount of money. But no, everybody gets it. His theory is that person will win convincingly, because America is ready for a health care plan. What do you think of the Dr. D theory?
I love it. You know, let me get full disclosure. I'm a Bernie bro, so that sounds like music to my ears. So let me just be honest with you. But that, you know, and let me put it on a more personal level. I've been on dialysis for 10 years. So most people don't know that until I tell them. I've been dealing with kidney failure for 17 years, and I'm only 45 years old. Not through anything that I've ever done. I've never smoked. David can attest, my friend of 30 years. I don't drink. I don't do recreational drugs. My worst bad habit is fried chicken. I love Popeyes.
I love chicken too. Right? Music to my ears.
So I have what's called a pre-existing condition. So healthcare is something that is near and dear to me. At the same time, and again, I'm liberal-minded. It's a simple thought process to me. You should not. I like Bernie. I view healthcare as a right. And that's where the big divide is. Most people, when we allow Republicans to frame healthcare as a privilege, as something you should work for, when they say things like, "Well, I've made all the right choices. Why should I have to pay?" Blah blah blah. Stop. If you have good health, did it have something to do with the choices you made? Perhaps, but it also had something to do with the privilege you had. Because if you grow up in an area that has food deserts, if you grow up in an area that all you can eat is McNuggets 4 times a week, then what is your health going to look like by the time you're 30, by the time you're 35? So again, healthcare for all is something that all Americans can appreciate, because even me saying that, black people in the inner city are not the only people with healthcare challenges in this country. That is something that is nationwide and we all feel. So I'm with Dennis all day. It is time for an unapologetic, full-throated endorsement of Medicare for all.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely agree that that one of the biggest impediments when we get down to a binary choice, when you get down to the Republican nominee and the Democratic nominee, the Republicans have done a very good job of boiling down their message to 2 or 3 issues. George W. Bush, you could ask him whatever you wanted to ask him. Hey, what's the weather like? And he'd say, "No child left behind." He would just over and over and over. So I do agree that the Democrats would really benefit from having a simple, succinct message that everyone knows what they stand for. And beyond that, the Medicare system that we have right now, as far as insurance is concerned, is based on the law of large numbers and pooling people together so that you can drive down the costs for everyone else. When you put everyone who's 65 and up, who are all sick, into one large pool, it's going to be expensive. So it only makes sense that if you put 320 million people into one big pool, that's going to drive down the cost for everyone individually. So it just makes fiscal sense to do that.
All right, but the other part that I really want to emphasize of the dentist, we're giving all this credit, Dr. D.
Hey, I like today's show.
Noted political scientist, Dr. D. He says this all the time. He's from the 618. He's from downstate Illinois. He says this all the time. People downstate want health care. There's this notion that the Trump voters or people who don't live within the blue world, like where everybody is Democrat, somehow or other don't want health care. And it's like a notion that people who live in that world don't smoke reefer, which I'll put to the side for the moment. It's one of my favorite topics. They do smoke it, but they want health care. That's Dennis's theory, and I agree with him on this point. I believe that if you offer somebody something, if you offer the voter something for his tax dollars, something really tangible, I don't know many voters would say no to it.
And to your point, and this is something that Atiba and I have discussed a lot, to his point that he just made, most people operate from the position of, hey, I'm paying my taxes, I'm doing what's right, and they think they're making the selfish decision to say, hey, I don't want to subsidize someone else's health care. But we don't live, this isn't the 1800s. We don't live in an agrarian society. We are all interconnected. So it is from a selfish motive that you should want to pay for someone else's health care so that when your kid goes to school, he doesn't get sick from another kid whose parents can't afford health care. Or when you go to the grocery store, you don't catch something from someone who's shopping in that grocery store because they don't have health care. Or you get on a plane and someone sneezes on the plane and you contract something because that person can't. You're protecting yourself by investing in a system that covers everyone. So just from a selfish point of view and from a fiduciary point of view, it just makes sense to create a national healthcare system for the 3rd largest country in the world.
And Ben, if I can offer something to support what you just said about this country and people in rural America also wanting health care, we've seen the evidence of that all during Donald Trump's first 2.5 years in his presidency. The first 2 years of his presidency, he had the House, he had the Senate, and they could not get rid of Obamacare. That's the one thing he wanted to do. And even then, they couldn't do it. Why? Because his constituents made it clear, you can get rid of it if you want, but you better have something better. And since they couldn't provide anything better, Obamacare is still the law of the land. That's the one thing he has not been able to undo. So again, the proof is in the pudding. If he could get rid of Obamacare, he would have gotten rid of it. But his constituents, whether they want to admit it or not, still wanted it.
Absolutely. And here's something I'm going to give Trump credit for. Trump is not afraid to demonize anybody who's against him. So for instance, this is unthinkable that he would be doing this as a Republican president. In my lifetime, Republicans have been always, quote unquote, the law and order party, and they just like revere, like for instance, the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover. Donald Trump was under investigation by the FBI, by the Justice Department for his wheeling and dealing with Russia. We all know they colluded with him. Whether they're going to prosecute him for it or not is beyond the point. He colluded with them. What did he do? Atiba, he just started he started demonizing the FBI. I'm like, I can't believe I'm living long enough to see a Republican law and order president demonizing the FBI. And I was a kid. There was a TV show called The FBI from Zimmerman Jr., and it was like Mr. Right. You get what I'm saying? So the Democrats, though, when it comes to health care, they see the insurance industry is opposing them. What do? They placate the insurance. They're afraid. They run away from Donald Trump. If we would start tweeting about the insurance company, calling them special interests, do you think the Democrats are finally willing to stand up and fight the way Donald Trump is fighting?
Only on the far left, or what we would consider the far left. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Ocasio-Cortez, thank you. She's been the most vocal opponent of this, along with Senator Bernie Sanders. And people are now beginning to listen. But as a whole, the Pelosi's of the world, the Cory Bookers of the world, the people in leadership, they are still slow-footing it, and we have to get them on board, because you're right. Messaging and framing has everything to do with it. And we're, as a party, unfortunately, we're still not there yet.
All right, let me ask you this question. Both of you sort of bring things together with what just what went down in Chicago. Most of your focus is on the national level, Trump and the presidential race for the Democrats, etc. But in Chicago, we just had the inauguration of Lori Lightfoot, mayor of the city of Chicago. She gave a passionate speech yesterday where she was definitely acknowledging sort of the leftist perspective of this city. In terms of talking about opening up government, being more equitable, being more fair, and sort of undoing the privileges that the elite had in Chicago for the last 20
Ever. We just say ever.
Well, Harold, okay. But anyway, so at least since 1990 or so. In your opinion, I get both of your opinions about this. Do you think that this is a sign of a trend that could be infecting the Democratic Party as a whole? Or do you think that, this is just a Chicago thing? What do you think? Do you think this is a larger theme that's going out there?
I definitely think this is a grassroots thing that's happening. The embrace of climate change has been coming from the grassroots up, because we can't get it established at the federal level. The embrace of this type of populism is really what we're talking about when we're talking about deconstructing the dynastic familial wealth that has controlled the third largest city in the United States. That's what we're talking about. So and it is not a coincidence that she had to come from the LGBT community to kind of embrace that end of the political spectrum. But definitely I think we're going to see that foregoing, just because the national Democrats to date have just been too feckless and spineless to really take a stand. And that's why the most important thing that Donald Trump has shown us is that sometimes the messenger is more important than the message. And right now, the Democrats on the national stage, in order for us to take back the White House, we need an effective messenger, because we already have the message.
So to answer that about Lori Lightfoot and nationally speaking, I think yes. And what is the evidence we can look at? We can cite the 2018 midterms. When you look at the diversity, how many first woman this, first this and that. Lori Lightfoot is the first female African-American mayor of the city. She's also LGBTQ, or part of that community. You look at our Democratic candidates for president. We have Cory Booker. We have Kamala Harris. We have Pete Buttigieg, right? Buttigieg, right. So we have a party that is more representative of what the country looks like and is heading in that direction. This country is getting more brown by the decade, and it's going to be a minority population soon. Nothing can prevent that. And I think it's great that, again, we're beginning to see government that begins to reflect that. So yeah, I don't think it's an anomaly or a one-off. I definitely think it's part of a grander movement.
All right. Well, before I let you go, I have to ask you, sort of picking up on the theme you just laid out there, Atiba, about the latest candidate running for the nomination, and that would be Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City. A very interesting background that he has. I followed his campaign very closely when he first ran. He's a white man married to a black woman, a woman who used to be, well, I don't know what her sexual preference was, but she used to be openly gay. And he was, when they first were elected, he was like sending out a message, like a very diverse background, a very diverse family, very open-minded, tolerant family. I'm speaking for myself, was not particularly pleased with some of the decisions he made as mayor of New York City. How do you view his campaign? How do you view his chances of winning, that kind of thing?
It's a rough start, mainly because when you look at the Electoral College, New York in and of itself, I think, has the second most votes. I think it's California, then New York, and then Illinois. And when he's coming from a state that he is not beloved at all,
put it mildly,
right? Putting it mildly, I think that makes it very difficult for him going forward. Anytime that we've seen senators or representatives from states run for president, and then in the primaries if they don't win their state, it's pretty much over. Like we saw that with Rubio. When he didn't win Florida, that was effectively the end of his campaign. So if he can't win New York, I think that's the end of it.
Well, let's remember that Donald Trump didn't win New York. He tweeted the other day about de Blasio, and I responded on his tweet a screenshot of the New York presidential vote total that showed that he lost by 2 million votes. So no, de Blasio is not the right person for this time, despite his diverse family. I think people are too savvy in 2019, and they're too savvy to make decisions about who they're going to let lead the free world based on their family dynamics.
My next guest, Stephanie Zimmerman, has entered the room. She wrote You Pay More, great investigative story. I'm showing the viewers this in the Sun-Times, and we'll be talking about that when we come back for break. But before I let you guys go, one last question, a local question with national implications. Your thoughts about Mayor Rahm's legacy as he drives off into the sunset. Unfortunately, I think he's not going anywhere. But anyway, your thoughts about Rahm's legacy.
Very quickly, I thought he was, unfortunately, an ineffective mayor. I thought he was an effective mayor for the parts of Chicago that he wanted to be effective in, the Gold Coast, downtown, those types of areas. But he left the other undesirable areas. He left them hanging, he left them wanting, and he left them lacking. And I think people will always remember him for the rejuvenation that he kind of gave to downtown and the Gold Coast, but also remember him for the neglect that he gave to the city's south and west side.
The same response. I have family that lives on the west side of Chicago in the North Lawndale area, and if you took a picture of their home 10 years ago and took a picture of their home today, and I put those two pictures in front of you, or the picture of their block or the picture of their neighborhood, you wouldn't be able to tell me which one was 10 years ago and which one was today. So that speaks to his priorities. But that's not a surprise. He came directly from Washington, D.C., having served under President Obama. He had that national mindset coming out of D.C., and he came to Chicago looking to make some macro changes. Unfortunately, he wasn't intimately involved enough with Chicago to prioritize and perhaps even identify the micro changes that needed to be made to improve the city.
All right, that's David Seaton, Atiba Buchanan, also in the studio. Gentlemen, give folks information where they can find your podcast, the name of your podcast, if they want to hear more of your political discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on Intellectual Radio. Humanity in the Headlines is the name of the show, intellectualradio.com. You can catch us on Saturdays at 1 o'clock, or you can go to YouTube and Google Humanity in the Headlines, and goodness, 50, 75 shows will come up. Right.
Worth of shows there.
So tons of shows on just about every topic you can imagine there, and enjoy them because they're all good.
Well, I really enjoyed talking politics with you. You know that. Atiba.
Same here, man. Thank you for having us.
And David, bring you in the mix as well. We have a regular, we call it bonus feature on Sundays where we talk national politics. We just had David Ferris, Roosevelt University Political Science professor. I encourage everybody to check it out. We take a deep dive in the issues. I'd love to bring you on for that special bonus. Take the deep dive.
We'd love to do
all
that.
These candidates. Let's
That'd
go
be
through
great.
it one by one and help people sort of make sense of the madness. You up for that?
We're definitely up for that.
All right, very good. Atiba Buchanan, David Seaton, thank you very much. Stephanie Zimmerman getting ready to step up. She's got a great story. You Pay More. We'll talk all about it when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food,
arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Discover the breadth and majesty of Chicago's architecture on a Chicago Architecture Center bus tour. From bungalows to Bauhaus, our expert docents will share the fascinating stories behind our city's architecture. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a bus tour right now. Oh my, look at that wonderful piece of architecture.
Cirque du Soleil's Big Top comes back to Chicago with its latest show, Volta Venture, into a captivating voyage of discovery inspired by the adventurous spirit of freedom, where a surge of action sparks a high-voltage journey. Volta, playing May 18th through July 6th under the Big Top at Soldier Field. Tickets at CirqueDuSoleil.com. Volta thanks their partners Hennessy Black and Champagne Nicolas Fayette.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Boy, Ben loves that song. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show is moments away. But before we get into that, we would like to thank the following unions once again for bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. First up, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Tuesday, May 21st, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we welcome Stephanie Zimmerman of the Chicago Sun-Times and its host of the Fight podcast, Sergio Vicente. And now your host, not host of the Fight podcast. That'd be a horrible podcast. This one, more politics. Yeah. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Although I could talk boxing all day and all night. Stephanie Zimmerman in the studio with me. Good driving record might not be enough. Man, this thing was a great investigation. I kept the paper because, folks, I still read newspapers. Stephanie's like, come on, Ben, get hip, get modern. It's on the internet. I still read newspapers, all right? We're going to bring Stephanie on and talk about the insurance racket and what a racket it is when you want to get some car insurance. Everybody needs auto insurance, but apparently it's not fair about how they figure out how much you pay for it. So we'll talk about that. I also may ask her a question about Amazon. She wrote another story about Amazon and the way they pack their boxes with junk that fill. I don't know where they put the junk, but it's not, we're destroying our planet, people. It's not helping in the fight to save our planet. So we'll have all that conversation with Stephanie Zimmerman, consumer investigations reporter for my beloved Bright One. But before we get to that, D, you got an update for me?
And we'll add that to the list of problems you have with Amazon.
Yeah, it's a growing list.
Not a fan, all right? You won't see him ordering anything anytime soon. Never. Yes, people. Lori Lightfoot is the mayor of Chicago, and right now we have a Benny J bonus interview for you to download that's related to it, of course, after today's program. Right now at both Chicago Reader and Chicago Sun-Times websites, chicago.suntimes.com/Joravsky and chicagoreader.com. Ben talked one-on-one with two of the people pulling the strings behind the scenes of the Lori Lightfoot campaign. They were there essentially from the beginning. Political strategist Joanna Klonsky and pollster Jason McGrath. Find out how Lori Lightfoot went from who to, oh yeah, her, Lori. In this exclusive Ben Joravsky Show bonus interview. Ben, tell us about your talk with Joanna and Jason.
It was great. First of all, I love them. I love guests who love to talk, and they love to talk. And so they gave a lot of insights about, yeah, you said it so well. She was who? She was at 3% in the polls, and how she emerged with, I think, 17% to win that first round. And then, of course, after that, it was gravy because it was pretty clear that the city of Chicago was going to elect her, not Tony Preckwinkle, almost from the outset. It could have been like, it was like the Portland Trailblazer Golden State Warriors series. Just why even have it? Okay, 4-game sweep. Anyway, I urge everybody, if you're a political junkie, you want to know how it went down, to listen to that. They get some insights about some of the challenges they were facing in that first round where they had to emerge from the pack. There were 14 people. And also the challenges of running when nobody knows the name, you don't have a lot of money, you're up against well-known people. So good stuff from Joanna and Jason.
A very enlightening interview. Go download it after you listen to today's show, all right? We got today's show to worry about. Yes. It's a fantastic show, all right? Yes. Don't leave. So with Lightfoot taking office, we now have a mayor for hire. And, Ben, we've joked about this for the longest time. With Mayor Rahm leaving office, exactly how long will it take until he winds up being a political talking head on TV? One day. Literally one day.
Yeah.
According to the Daily Beast, Rahm Emanuel has taken a job with ABC. He is joining the network as a political contributor. One source familiar with the situation told the Daily Beast that the ex-mayor will be appearing on shows like Good Morning America. Oh, get ready, Ben, as a political analyst.
Yeah, we knew it was coming. He spent the last 3 months sort of trying out his voice, and he just wrote another essay for The Atlantic. In addition, he writes essays for The Atlantic. Shame on The Atlantic for printing these things. This current one is about chastising the Democrats for being the party of the elites. The man is utterly shameless. He spent 8 years as Mayor 1%. He earned that nickname the hard way by me being the mayor for the 1%. Everybody in the city of Chicago, not everybody, there are some people, my beloved friend Tom McNamee, everybody in the city of Chicago.
Tommy Mac.
A lot of people in the city of Chicago were so sick of his game and couldn't wait for him to get out. And what he has done, I give him credit for this. He's very skillful. He's very shameless. He's very willful. He is just completely rewriting history, eradicating everything he did as mayor of the city of Chicago in terms of closing schools, in terms of closing mental health clinics, in terms of sending our property tax dollars to developers. How he could talk about the Democratic Party becoming the party of the elite as though he's lecturing the party. He just got finished strong-arming the city council into passing over $2 billion worth of handouts to developers to build in upscale neighborhoods. How the same person who could so shamelessly give our tax dollars to the wealthy turn around and chastise Democrats for not doing more for the poor and the middle class. I just find it just breathtaking. So I'm sure he's going to be a huge success, and I'm going to have a field day pointing out to whoever listens that whatever he says bears no relationship to what he did.
We posted the Daily Beast article on our Facebook page, @BennyJ Show. Go check it out. While you're there, give us a like, follow, share, review. Tell us you don't like the show. Whatever you want to do, it's fine. @BennyJ Show.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dr. D. Stephanie Zimmerman. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And this is a great story. I know it appeared online, so it's online. It's also in the newspaper. And good driving record might not be enough. Gender, employment, and zip can drive car insurance costs, a Sun Times investigation found. So let's talk a little about it. Just in general, what were your findings? Break it down a little bit.
Okay, so I was really curious kind of what goes into car insurance, how they figure out your price. And it's something that's very opaque. Like you wouldn't necessarily know like what your neighbor was paying for car insurance. So what I decided to do was what they tell us all to do in their advertisements, which is go online and get a fast free quote. And I did it over 300 times, which was, a pain, something not a normal consumer would do. But I created a sort of a scheme of what this person is. So this person is 38 years old. They're single. They drive a 2012 Ford Taurus SE, and they drive about 10,000 miles a year. And they have a perfect driving record. So no tickets, no violations. They're a good driver. And then what I did was start tweaking different variables. So I made this person be a man and be a woman, or be a renter and be a homeowner, or be a college-educated teacher or a retail worker with a high school education, and just kind of played around. And I was picking addresses on the same block or no more than one block apart. Usually they were on the same block. So in some cases, and I went on Zillow. So I found like comparable housing. So they're both in single-family houses about the same size. So you've got a man and a woman living next door to each other, and you can start to see in a broad sense what is happening with these car insurance companies. And not all of them do it, but many do. So you basically just ask, what do you charge for basic insurance? And you could start to see differences of hundreds of dollars a year just because you're a woman. And this guy, your neighbor could be living 2 doors down from you, and you're both driving a 2012 Ford Taurus, and you both have a perfect record, and you're both working as teachers, and you both own your homes, and the guy is paying up to $370 less a year. Wow. And it's really interesting because some states have decided that that's not something that's fair, and 7 states have outlawed this. So
$370 less a year, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when they give you an insurance quote online, they'll do it either on a monthly basis or a 6-month basis. So I just annualized that and made it a year.
Okay.
And they do, and one caveat, so these are price quotes because they all say on their websites that your real price will be based partly on your credit history. Every single company says this. So they all take into account your credit history, which is a whole other topic. Like that's a whole other thing that a lot of consumer groups say is unfair and penalizes people who might be low income or might have other financial struggles, but still be a good driver. And these are non-driving characteristics. This has nothing to do with whether you've had accidents or moving violations or anything like that. So they do say that they take into account credit history, but you can still see these broad kind of ways in which things like gender, homeownership, education, occupation, they're kind of baked into the formula to begin with. Because I'm testing these people that have like zero credit history, that's blank, okay, on the ones I'm doing because I don't have real Social Security numbers. But you could still see these differences coming out. Like, why would a renter who's living like right on the same block as the homeowner, they are driving the same car. And in those cases, same car, same job, same education, same gender. And just because you rent, you're paying more for your car insurance.
All right, let's deal with these biases that are baked into the system, as you say. It's a very good way of putting it. They're baked into the system. Let's start with the first one, gender. Other than just misogyny, hatred of women, other than just rank discrimination, what even remotely legitimate reason could an insurance company have for charging women more for car insurance than charging men?
Right. So when you talk to the car insurance industry people, right, all of their data and stuff like that, they keep a lot of this secret. It's like their trade secrets. But when you talk to the industry people, they say we don't discriminate. They say we look at our book of business in the territory, which is usually a zip code, and we look at all these tons of factors, hundreds of different factors, and that's how, and losses and claims and all this, and this is how we determine the rates that we are going to set. So they say that it's just numbers, and it's gender blind, it's color blind, and everything else. And you know, if you've had teenagers, when people are young, it goes the other way. Like a young driver, a young, just beginning driver, a male will oftentimes get charged more than a young female. But after that, it goes way in the favor of the males.
Is there an age where you could see the pattern? So, for instance, like, okay, an 18-year-old man pays more than an 18-year-old woman. Is there an age when you certainly see, oh, the women are paying more?
Well, you would start to see that if you, I mean, I did 300 tests with a 38-year-old.
Yeah.
You would have to do that with every single age. It'd take you years to do. But Consumer Federation of America did their own studies. They've studied this for over a decade, and they've looked at 40-year-olds and 60-year-olds, and those women are definitely getting discriminated against price-wise. When California just took gender out of it as of January 1st. It's a brand new law in California. They joined 6 other states in taking gender out of the equation, just like it's already illegal to discriminate based solely on race, ethnicity, religion. So these 7 states have added gender to that and said this is just not fair. When they looked at it, their insurance commissioner said that he could not find any statistical validity, that the statistical whatever reason for it was suspect. So
in other words, in your humble opinion, it's just rank discrimination.
Well, it does seem unfair. It's not anything related to your driving. Your gender is something that you can't control, just like your race, ethnicity, those other factors that society has said we're not going to allow insurance companies to say, I'm going to charge white people one price and black people another price. Mm-hmm. That's actually illegal. Yeah. And the insurance companies will say, we don't do that. We're not allowed to do that. Now, there's a lot of discussion among consumer groups about whether some of these other things like credit history could be a proxy for income or whatever, trying to find populations that way. But these 7 states that have banned it, they've decided that gender should be added to that list of things that are not fair.
Well, it's really weird because insurance geeks that I have talked to over the years have tried to impress upon me what you were saying is that it is a completely objective industry, that there's these actuarial studies that they determine where they feed information into a computer. So the number of women who get into accidents as compared to the number of men who get into accidents has determined that women are at greater risk. That was what they would tell me. I have never, in my world, even though there's this prejudice that women are not as good drivers as men, I've not seen any evidence of it. My wife is a way better driver than I am. Okay, that's just one family. But so it's just like, it just seems as though they're getting away with it. So they are getting away with it, and there's no other reason than that. Then we get to the issue of race. Now, when you fed your information into the computers here, they never asked you for the race, correct?
No, they're not allowed to ask for the race, but they asked for the zip code.
Aha!
So, and that was really interesting. Like, I was looking on either side of various zip code lines around the city. And just for example, 60612, which is pretty close to here, to the West Loop. It's East Garfield Park, but it's a rapidly gentrifying area, 60612. And then Kedzie is the line between 60612 and 60624. 60624 is also in East Garfield Park, but it continues west into the west side. Okay. And the racial makeup of those 2 zip codes is pretty different. The east half of it is gentrifying. It's drawing more white residents. And when you look at the price quotes there were, it's like 100, 150, I forget what it was, depending on which company you're looking at. But there were 3 different companies that were charging over $100 more just for living on the other side of Kedzie. And we're talking about we are talking about the 3100 block of a street called Walnut on the west side. It's near Lake Street. 3100 block and the 3200 block. You could literally stand on the 3100 block and pick up a rock and throw it and hit a house on the other side of Kedzie. And that the person there, if they have all the same characteristics, they're, we were with that comparison, we're making them both be female. They both are teachers. They both are homeowners. And of course, in every test, they're all 38 years old, single, and drive the 2012 Ford Taurus. But why is the one in the blacker zip code paying an extra $100? I mean, it's just stuff like that. And then the really interesting thing is that when you start to pile on a number of these characteristics, so you make the person be female and they're a renter and they didn't go to college, compared to a male who owns his home and did go to college, the difference could be over $600.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money. And I think the argument against that kind of like slicing and dicing people is that you are taking somebody who might be sort of at a financial disadvantage and you're just piling on one more burden. Here's an extra $600 just because you're poor.
Back in the day, we called it redlining, and that's where that had to deal with getting a mortgage. And how much you paid for the mortgage. And if you lived within a certain area, which was usually demarcated with a red line, hence the name redlining, then you would pay you either couldn't get the mortgage or you would pay at a much higher rate or what have you. When I talk again to people in the insurance industry, we've already dispelled the notion, for instance, starting that there's no reason why women should pay more than men. If you're not basing it on a study that shows women are at greater risk as drivers, then it's just rank discrimination. Someone should file a lawsuit, in my humble opinion. Now, get down to address. They always go, Ben, you don't understand. Insurance people, you don't understand. It's dangerous. It's more of a liability if we're in a high crime area because the car could get smashed into. Somebody could break the window, steal the radio, et cetera, et cetera. That's why we charge. It's got nothing to do with race, Ben. All right, stop causing trouble. That's what they always tell me, Stephanie. Now, I don't buy that, okay? And your story really proves that when you show like literally one block to the next. It can't be a distinction. Do you think we can mandate an end to this discrimination based on zip code, or do you think that location, the distinction in rates for location, is something that the insurance companies could justify in court?
Okay, so one thing with what you said, everybody I talked to about this story, like friends I'm talking to, I'm working on this story, everybody said, oh, well, if you live in a rough neighborhood, you should pay more for your car insurance. But in these tests, I did not include comprehensive car insurance. That's what covers car break-ins and thefts and all that stuff, vandalism. I was just looking for quotes on bodily injury and property damage, just the liability insurance, which it's important to point out is required by the state in order to be able to drive to get to work or get to school. So here's the state telling you need to buy this good or service. You need to buy insurance. Otherwise, you could get a big ticket for not driving without insurance, yes. Right? So I didn't even look at comprehensive. So I wanted to purposely take that out of the discussion so that we couldn't be saying, oh, you're more likely to get your car broken into. Although in Lincoln Park, there's a lot of car thefts. So, that's a whole other discussion. Yeah. But I didn't look at that. Mm-hmm. The car insurance industry says that they need to use zip codes because that's just how they organize like their territories. And I get that, they have to have a way to organize things, I suppose. They say, and this is interesting, they say that all of these rates, just like you mentioned earlier, it's all based on statistics, it's colorblind, it's gender blind, it's just like what the numbers show us within a certain territory or zip code, what our losses were, right? So that's what they say. And they say that if you start removing factors, they say if you overregulate, this is just their position, if you start removing factors like you take out gender or you take out home ownership out of the equation, or you take out credit history. 3 states have banned credit history from being used. So they say the more you take out, the less valid the data becomes because it's been stripped of all of these, things, these points. I think the argument on the other side, and this is what the consumer advocacy groups would say, is that as a society, we can decide whether something is just not fair. That's why we take race out of it. That's why we take religion out of it, or, ethnicity, factors like that. I think that is the argument for taking gender out of it. Just that we as a society have decided that this isn't fair because it's going to penalize a large population of female drivers that are good drivers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I don't know how they can claim their studies and their actuarial tables are valid if they automatically charge women more than men. I'm looking for the study that says that women drivers are a greater risk than men drivers. I have to see that study, that actuarial study by the geeks who run the computers for these insurance companies. That has, before I could justify just randomly charging Leah more than Sergio, who's my next guest, for car insurance.
Right. And the other interesting thing is that not all the companies in my test did that. For example, State Farm, in all of the quotes that I did, State Farm did not. They asked me what my gender was, but they did not use that against me if I was testing as a female. So that tells me that it doesn't have to be done. I think State Farm probably relies more heavily on credit history. So there's that. That's a whole other topic. But not every single company does it. So that kind of tells you, well, they can choose to do it or not. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of interesting too.
Are there any insurance companies that were worse than others that your study showed?
Well, that's hard to say because I wasn't able to test for their reliance on credit history because I didn't have actual Social Security numbers. I'm generating sort of, fictional driver applicants that are different genders or homeowners or renters or whatever, but I didn't have Social Security numbers. So it's hard for me to say, like in the test, farmers was often the one that charged more for being female or renting or whatnot. Farmers came up again and again, and Geico was, a ways behind them, but Geico would be second place. But, who knows? After we put in credit history, you might find that there's another company who is doing something else of over reliance on credit history, because there's a whole other argument to be made for whether you're late paying your electric bill. Maybe you're struggling financially and you were late paying your ComEd bill, and now you're going to get charged for more for your car insurance, which has no seeming relationship. I think the car insurance industry will say, well, if you're people who are more likely to be late paying their electric bill are people who are more likely to be in an accident. But I think there's a fairness question to be raised about whether you're kind of kicking people while they're down. People who have financial markers of more low-income people.
Now, I have to ask you this. There's a sidebar to your story, how to lower your premium. Are people as defenseless as you're made up applicant? You made up a person on 300. God dang, Stephanie, that was a lot of Can we give Stephanie credit? 300. How many did you do?
Yeah, it was over 300. It was a pain. It was horrible.
Hey, give her a raise sometimes. 300. All right, that's a lot of feeding to a computer. But you were the person, your little models, that the 300 were just, of course, not real people. You were just feeding something in a computer, and they just had to take whatever the insurance company offered. What could a real living human being, a real living Stephanie Zimmerman do to get a lower rate?
Yeah, you know what? The biggest thing I learned was you got to shop around. There was huge variability between, even at the same address, looking at 7 different companies, there was a huge difference in prices. Some companies were offering lower coverage at a higher price. So definitely take the time and shop around. Another thing that I've heard is that sometimes your loyalty to any one company will be rewarded with a higher rate. And that happened to our family. We ended up switching because we'd stuck with one company so long. They thought we were suckers, and they just kept raising the rates. And then,
that happens.
There is some thought that these insurance companies, some of them are testing kind of the elasticity of like how likely are you to just sit and take a price increase. So sometimes being loyal is actually not a good thing. I would shop around. Definitely take advantage of any kind of discounts. You can save a little bit of money by bundling. You can also save money if you belong to a union or some other association. application. Look for discounts there. There's things that you can do. Another interesting thing is this these new devices. Well, they're not even that new. Snapshot by Progressive, DriveWise, Right Track. A bunch of these companies have these telematic devices that you can either put in your car, or it's an app on your phone or on your OnStar, and it will track like whether you speed a lot, whether you hard brake a lot, whether you make a lot of left turns.
Oh my God!
And if you're
really?
well, I know that's kind of crazy too, right? But you can save money if you're a safe driver. The only thing to consider, and it's a big thing to consider, is how much privacy are you willing to give up? Because what are they ultimately someday going to be tracking? Are they going to be tracking whether you drive to the casino a lot or whatever?
Going to the casino. Oh, there goes that rate. No, Ben's at the casino again.
And he was speeding.
No, I'm not letting anybody track me when I'm driving. But you get on that phone and start arguing with your insurance agent. That's usually the best way to get a lower rate. But then, you gotta find your inner Rom. You know what I'm saying? You gotta find your little I'm right, you're wrong, I'm smart, you're stupid. I tell you what, you can learn a lot from Rom. All right, now before I let you go on, before I bring Sergio on, just briefly tell folks, I thought it was a fascinating story that you did. When I booked you to come on the show, we are going to talk about this good driving record, but then I saw that article that you wrote in the Sun-Times about Amazon and packaging and all the recycling implications. Tell folks a little bit about that.
Real quick. That was the story I did with ABC7. Jason Knowles, he had been collecting for months these videos of items that he ordered. He does a lot of online shopping. And he did all these unpacking videos where you would open this giant box and there would be this tiny little thing like a package of razors or coffee pods or something. And it's just like jammed in with bubble wrap and in a giant box. And got us kind of thinking, what is the environmental implication of all of that packaging? And it's kind of a mixed bag, because on the one hand, we are getting a lot of boxes into our houses, and delivery trucks are having to drive all over the city delivering this stuff. But on the other hand, we're not driving to the stores, so we're reducing our carbon footprint by shopping online. It's kind of a mixed bag. A promising note is that the industry seems to have gotten the message a little bit. They've been hearing consumer complaints, and they're trying to right-size things. They're trying to come up with boxes that are more fitting the item that's being shipped. Amazon says that they're working on like environmentally conscious paper, like pouches rather than the plastic. But all of this stuff, all of the recycling stuff has been thrown into disarray by China saying they're not going to take U.S. recycling because we have dirty foreign trash. So there's that whole thing. So right now, the state of recycling in the U.S. is kind of sad.
By the way, we will be having a larger discussion with this. Mike Novak will be coming in later in the week. He's passionate about recycling. I'm just going to say this in closing. This points out one of the great hypocrisies. I love millennials, okay? I love them to death. Okay, many millennials in my life. Even I know a few Gen X who falls into this. They don't buy newspapers, all right, Stephanie? And I go, why don't you buy a newspaper? Oh, Ben, it's the footprint. They always talk about the footprint. It's paper, and it gets recycled. I read on my phone, and I always say, man, you don't care about the environment. You're just cheap. It's free on the phone.
And there went our millennial listeners. They just tuned out.
I just always have to argue, man, you guys are so cheap. It's the cheapest generation I've ever seen. And but that just proves my point. Someone will go, oh, Ben, I read on the phone because I don't want the newspaper. Be the first person to order from Amazon to get a razor blade with about what about the environmental footprint? Ben, you don't understand. I love Amazon. Anyway, Stephanie, you just proved my point there, all right? Stephanie Zimmerman is her name, and her game is investigative journalism. She's a great consumer affairs reporter. I think we're going to have you back on a regular basis talking about these issues, all right?
Great. I'd love to come back.
All right, very good. Sergio Vicente is on deck. We're going to bring him on when we return.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. See the city from a whole new angle on a Chicago Architecture Center tour. With more than 85 tours to choose from, there are endless stories to discover. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm on a tour. Oh my, what magnificent architecture! Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food,
arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. It's a thrift shop located at 6241 North Broadway in Chicago, and it's badass furniture, appliances, lamps, books, clothes, electronics. Guys, it's a thrift shop, but it's the only thrift shop in Chicago that helps bring you the Ben Joravsky Show. That's right. So if you're ever on Broadway between Granville and Devon, tell them thank you. And go check out Green Element Resale, 6241 North Broadway, and find more information at greenelementresale.com. Now, this next part may sound a bit biased because they're sponsors, but it's the best thrift shop in the world.
Cirque du Soleil's Big Top comes back to Chicago with its latest show, Volta Venture, into a captivating voyage of discovery inspired by the adventurous spirit of freedom, where a surge of action sparks a high-voltage journey. Volta, playing May 18th through July 6th under the Big Top at Soldier Field. Tickets at CirqueDuSoleil.com. Volta thanks their partners Hennessy Black and Champagne Nicolas Fayette.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Yes, indeed. We are back. We're live. Sergio Vicente is my guest in the studio. He is the host of the Fight podcast. I've known Sergio for a long, long time. He's young. I'm old, but when I met him, he was really young. We'll get into all that. D, you got an update for us before we go to Sergio?
Just go check out the article posted on our Facebook page at Benny J Show. Mayor Rahm accepted a job at ABC. Ben's pumped about it. He can't wait to see him on his television.
I knew it was going to happen, man. The guy's a natural, you know, and he's going to be a big superstar in the media, make a lot of money. He's the man. He's the myth, the legend. But I'm not going to let it get away with rewriting history, all right?
It's just funny because we joke about how long till he becomes a commentator. Yeah, one day.
One day.
Literally one day.
He cut that deal.
My goodness. A few of you have went on the Facebook page and weighed in with your thoughts to this here. It says here, once again, ABC News has hired Rahm Emanuel as a contributor. Our friend AJ says, a contributor of what?
Nonsense.
He will nothing more than he's nothing more than a mouthpiece for the Democrats on a major network. Jennifer says, let's hope this keeps him from ever running for another office. Yeah, good point, Jennifer.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Donald says, great, another anti-progressive shill for the wealthy employed by corporate media. Oh, you and Donald should hang out sometime,
Donald,
Ben.
I see eye to eye in that one.
All right, Deborah says, this comes as no surprise to me. Devin said the rumors were flying. Steve says, what a joke. Martise says, oh, God, no. No. Yeah. Oh, God, no. I think Julie wins a comment of the day here. Ugh, just go away, dude. But I want to read Jason's comment here. Ben, defend yourself, okay? Jason puts, Ben hates Rahm so much he doesn't think he should work again. Is that true?
I hate the guy, man. He's giving me a lot of material. I love Rahm. Come on, Jason. No, that's not how I view it. I view it this way. Rahm Emanuel is, how do I put this? He's a role model for children in this regard. I've said this many times. If you really want to get ahead in the world, you should be consider being utterly willful, shameless, determined to get what you want, unafraid to drive over the person who's in front of you. That's secret to success. We're going to talk to Sergio about that. Some of the traits that Rahm has displayed by clawing his way to the top. Of course, he started on second base or third base, so it's not like he, had a huge disadvantage. But some of those traits will get you far in the world of kickboxing or the world of mixed martial arts or the world of boxing. All right. Now, if you're going to be compassionate, objective, analytical, mayor of the city of Chicago that is trying to fairly and equitably distribute goods and services to the people who most need them, I'm not sure those traits will get you very far, and they certainly didn't get the city of Chicago very far during Rahm's watch. He was very much, in my humble opinion, he very much earned the reputation that he had as Mayor 1%, and he cared mostly about the well-to-do, and he cut programs that would help the poor. He closed mental health clinics. He closed schools. He gave TIF dollars to gentrifying areas. That's indisputable. What he's tried to do in the last year is completely rewrite his history. So I don't begrudge him going on and making money and building his brand and being the media superstar that he's clearly meant to be. I just don't want him to get away with rewriting history. Is that fair enough?
Thank you, Chicago, for this humbling victory. All I can say, you sure know how to make a guy feel at home.
He's gonna miss him, guys. He's gonna miss him.
That's what he said to ABC. You sure know how to make a guy feel at home.
Take a chill pill, man.
Mayor Rahm, man. I was there yesterday. I saw it with my own eyes. He voluntarily left the stage and cut a deal with ABC. Probably had his brother negotiate it. All right, Sergio Vicente is my guest. Sergio, what's your thoughts of Mayor Rahm as he heads off into the
The best way I could actually explain it is for MMA fans, for instance, he's Dana White. He's the Dana White of Chicago. He runs it the exact same way. He bullies himself around, and he gets a lot of advice from Rahm's brother. That's who's Dana White's business partner is as well. Dana and the UFC were sold to WME, ING, whatever that they're called over there, and and it's a very, very similar attitude. It's a very it's me. Oh, you think it's somebody else? No. It's your fault. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar type of vibe. And you can see those people kind of blend together. They all seem to hang out. So I'm not a fan of Rahm. And also, I mean, just for me, I'm somebody who, I guess you can say I'm a little bit farther to the left.
Okay.
He's extremely establishment, and for me, that's just not what we need at this point in time.
All right, now explain to people who are not fans of the fight game who Dana White is and what his attributes are and how they compare to Mayor Rahm.
So, before I sit back and trash, Dana White. Dana White is the president of the UFC. He is the individual who a lot of individual people credit for growing the sport. He has gone out there and he has been the consummate promoter. And let's be honest, that's what Rahm is as well. He is the consummate promoter
of
himself.
Yeah.
And even if you look at what the UFC is doing now, we're looking at how, because they were just sold and they're working now with ESPN. If you're looking at all of the ads that are out there, it's not focusing on the fighters. Like Rahm wasn't focusing on the city. He's focusing all the highlights and everything is himself. He's looking at himself, all the things. You see my man in his black suit, looking like, Kingpin himself.
Yeah.
And now he's out there thinking, he is the star of the show. He believes that he is bigger than the organization or the sport itself. It's my show, not anyone else's.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
that's how I can see the comparison of the two. That's just me.
All right. No, that is very well put, Sergio Vicente. All right, Sergio, let's just take a little moment before we dive into some of the political issues of the day to introduce you to our listeners. I've known you, as I said, want to say you were about 10. Around 10.
Yeah, no, it was about 10 years old now I think about it, yeah.
He was about 10. I've known this guy since he was 10 years old. And it's because his younger brother played on the Little League team that I coached, and Sergio was the older kid who would come over to our diamond and, all right, this is how the game is played, all right?
Yeah. At 10 years old, I knew it all. I did.
He knew it all. So you were an athlete in high school, and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Oh, of course. Well, my name is Sergio Vicente. I am not only the host of the Fight Podcast, and we are everywhere on all social media platforms at the Fight Podcast. We're also streaming on iTunes, SoundCloud, everywhere podcasts are available. But for myself, I also am the owner of Sage Eats. We're a healthy meal prep company, so I do both of those things. But the way, especially if we're talking about the combat sports, started competing and training in martial arts as a kid. That was the first sport that my mom put me in. I was a rambunctious child who was bouncing off the walls. They were like, maybe he needs ADD. My mom was like, no, maybe he needs to do martial arts. So I was put in martial arts, and I have been a fan of the sport everything from Ninja Turtles to eventually developed to combat sports, MMA, boxing, kickboxing, and I've been fortunate enough to compete. Well, depends on how you look at it, but compete in all of those sports. I've competed in MMA, boxing, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, the whole litany.
Now,
of
were you
things.
ever in the ring and afraid? Did you ever have
Yeah,
fear?
you're terrified. Yeah, the moment. I mean, I'll never forget my first competition. It sounds a little gladiatory when they're sitting there. It's like it's my first fight. But when I was in there, the first time you actually hear, like you're in there, you're hyped up. You're like, this is cool. I'm about to compete. And then you hear a cage door close. You hear that click clack.
Yeah.
Oh, and you see this other guy looking across from you, pacing back and forth.
Yeah.
Next thing you start looking at your coach, it's like, wait, who tricked me?
Yeah.
Like, why am I here? And I'm be honest with you, no matter how many times you do it, it doesn't change. It always reminds me of, for instance, George St. Pierre, who a lot of individuals say is the greatest MMA fighter of all time. And he is someone who always spoke of how he was terrified prior to every event. And we're talking about the greatest champion of all time, being so honest and open about how he felt going into a match. He was almost to the point that he was sick. He'd get so worked up and anxious over. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I've been there. I can relate. It is a very nerve-wracking
Would you throw up
experience.
before a fight?
I never threw up. I'm just one of those people that I get so nervous. I get really tired. I get really sleepy and like I'm ready to pass out in the back room until it's like you almost have to wake me up. All right, time to go warm up. And then I'll warm up and I'll get into it. And really, everyone has their own process. And I want to always make sure to let everybody know I wasn't able to turn pro. I've had a number of amateur fights. I was on the verge of turning pro, but what ended up stopping me from going through that is actually at 26, I had a testicular cancer. And because of that, it made me take a couple years off. And by that point in time, I realized, hey, you know what? I'd rather talk about it than get punched in the face, actually.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know, it's ironic. It's so ironic that you had that career because, as I said, I've known Sergio for a long time. And I used to live vicariously through Sergio when he was playing football, had his football career. And I remember your last football game as a senior at Evanston High School. ETHS, we will fight for you. And I was sitting with your mom and your dad in the stands watching you play. And I'm getting chills just thinking about this. When the game ended, your mom said, "Thank God that's over." And she didn't mean literally the game, that individual game. She meant your football career.
Right.
Because your mom, I was living vicariously. Yeah, Sergio out there, man, hit him. And he was running back punts. Come on, Sergio, don't take the fair catch. Your mom had a different point of view.
Oh, no, she didn't. I had to sneak to actually sign up. I started playing, I think I was almost into halfway through my first year playing football before she even found out that I was playing. And I didn't actually play. And I'll be honest with you, if you think football was bad, wait till she found out that I was actually competing in MMA.
Yeah.
So first day I came home with a black eye. It wasn't a good day, I'll tell you that much. It wasn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, which is more dangerous, football or why?
Football.
Explain that.
I thoroughly believe, especially in terms of MMA, and don't get me wrong, a lot of the sport is so new, we don't know. We're still waiting to hear what's going on, and we're starting to see the ramifications of a lot of the individuals who started. Remember, the UFC didn't start till 1993. So yes, they had Vale Tudo, they had Shoot the Box, and they had all these other type of sports and organizations, but it wasn't classified as MMA. And then, especially if you remember in '93 when the UFC first came out, it was called No Holds Barred. Yeah. So everybody was waiting for No Holds Barred and things like that. So we really don't know the ramifications. But if we look at it, and people have said, and I'm throwing up air quotes because people say scientifically, right?
We're on the air so they can see the air
it's
quotes.
okay, scientifically. There we got it. But people believe that because MMA, we're not taking it. You rarely take straight headshots. A lot of the majority of the sport is actually on the ground. So guys aren't getting just blasted. For instance, like football, for instance, look at a lineman. Every movement is constant contact. And it's the small shots. It's never the big KO shots. It's never the big ones where you're seeing the receiver get lit up on the back end. It's never that. what it is all the small, the constant, the practices, the constant little, shots. And that's what people end up getting CTE and other degenerative issues of. But MMA, you don't have that same type of constant punishment because the sport actually varies in so
well, when
many
you when you get your opponent down, you can pummel that opponent.
It looks a lot worse than it is.
It looks pretty bad.
And I'm being honest with you, being somebody that's been in that position.
You've been on the ground.
I've been in both of those positions.
But aren't they allowed just to hit your head repeatedly?
So think about this. It's just like boxing in terms of I can hit everybody. You can't hit the crown. So anything behind the head, on top of the head, behind the ear, you can't do. But obviously in the face or anything like that, yes, I can end up hitting.
So the prevention of the concussion is if you hit me in the face, it won't give me a concussion?
Well, here's the thing. You're going to people get concussions. People might not be as concussed. There's different levels of being concussed. I don't believe I've been concussed at this point in time, but ask me in 20 years how I feel. But so we truly don't know, but at the end of the day, what it seems as if, because it's not as many micro aggressions, essentially it's not as many micro hits, it's not as bad. Football is definitely worse.
All right. And then there's the helmet. You use the helmet as a weapon in football.
And here's another thing too. Think about this. And if all we're wearing are 8-ounce gloves, even if I'm making contact with somebody, I can't use that as a weapon. It still hurts. I still feel it.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. I can't just with shoulder pads and a helmet just spear somebody. That doesn't happen. So I mean, granted, this weekend it might have looked like that this weekend when Deontay Wilder, the WBC heavyweight champion, the American heavyweight champion, who is now 41-0-1. 41 knockouts.
Oh, you do host a podcast.
No, he knows his stuff, man.
And he also has a 95.2% knockouts percentage now. Yeah. He is somebody. Now, if he hits you, we're talking about something completely different.
All right. Now, should our General Assembly here in Illinois, should Congress, even on the national level, just to keep it local, should they outlaw tackle football for kids who are under the age of, let's say, 13?
Ooh, I don't know if I'm the person to talk to about that or ask that, specifically because I have not watched football for the last 3 seasons. I don't watch the game.
But you played it.
I have played it, but for a number of reasons, I don't watch or support the game. So for me, I look at it. Is it good for a young mind that's still developing to get consistently blasted back and forth? No, absolutely not. It isn't. So objectively, I can look at it and say, no, it doesn't seem right. But I'm not the one to make that call, especially because I don't support the game itself. And I think a lot of people will make assumptions and judge a lot of different things. And if they don't have any background, who are they to even make a conversation about it? So I haven't played. I didn't play at the top level. So for me, I look at it. I can't even comment on.
Well, what about boxing? What should be the age limit, in your humble opinion, for boxing or mixed martial arts?
To actually start competing, I'll say late teens. Training, I'll train a kid 4 years old to start competing. But in terms of actually getting solid shots, actually getting really hit, not until you're late teens, 18, 17, 18. And I know a lot of traditionalists are like, oh, no, you got to start them young. Make sure they're tough.
Yeah.
Yo, little kids do not need to get punched in the face in that manner. It doesn't matter. But here's the thing. If they're learned to respect the game, if they're all learned how to know the technique, as well as know technique, they can go out there and also spar in terms of no headshots, working the body, working on timing, working on movement. For instance, the Thais. We look at Muay Thai. In Thailand, that's their national sport.
Yeah.
You see children who are babies competing. You see people who are 11 years old who have over 100 fights. It's ridiculous. But one thing that they do is they never spar hard. And what they do is they call it play. No headshots, work consistently on timing. Light kicks, you extend at the same speed, but it's at right at the point of contact, light tap. It's all controlling. So that's something that I believe if children are going to learn how to do these combat sports,
learn the sport, understand the sport, and especially if you're going to be in terms of MMA, go to jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu, I can go, I don't care how young or how old you are, I can go as hard as I want. I'm not going to get any head damage. And that's something that also as young people, you know, girls, smaller individuals, jiu-jitsu is something that not only is going to keep you limber and free-flowing like yoga would, but it's all, and it has the cardiovascular health and endurance as well, but you're also going to learn how to defend yourself. The sport itself was made for the smaller person to win. So it is a great martial arts for that, and you're not taking the punishment.
You take essentially what it would ordinarily be viewed as a weakness, this is basic jiu-jitsu, and turn it into a strength.
100%.
Work that person's strength against him,
yes.
Your adversary or your opponent's strength against him. That's classic jiu-jitsu. Sergio Vicente is my guest. We come back, we're going to talk about the attitude of the great fighters, how it could apply to the Democrats who are running against Trump. We'll be right back.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
All right, people, bad news. After 5 years in Andersonville, Murray and White has made the difficult decision to close their doors. Oh, sipping on some water there. Everything
it's
in their
delicious.
Everything in store is on sale. Notable sale items, all of these things Ben Joravsky loves. You better get there before he does, all right? He loves this stuff. Everything in the store on sale. Notable sale items like Voluspa and Nest fragrance brand candles. They're 20% off.
I love candles.
I know. When I think of Ben Joravsky, I think of candles, all right? Those are 20%
Candle
off.
burned out long
Please
before.
stop singing. These lines can rarely be found on sale, so while 20% isn't the largest discount, lovers of both these popular candle lines like Ben have been buying them up. All rugs, 30% off in-store and new orders through June 1st.
Wait, did you say rugs?
Rugs.
Oh, man. Hold on. I'm going.
Oh, he loves rugs. All right, those are off. 30 to 50% off. Antique furniture pieces, 40 to 50% off. Pillows, 40% off. Picture frames, 40% off. And jewelry is 40 to 50% off. Mirrors and wall art, 30 to 50% off. Home decor and accessories are all 20 to 60% off. Lamps, 50% off as well. People, there is a lot of stuff on sale at Murray and White. After 5 years in Andersonville, they have decided to close their doors. Store fixtures and lighting is also on sale. Head over to Murray and White in Andersonville now to get some deals. And like I said, you better get there before Ben Joravsky does. My God, he loves candles. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Benny J, take us home.
All right, hold on. I'm lighting my candle. It goes really good with this music.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very mellow, man. Got my candles. Really chilling out. Sergio Vicente is my guest. The Fight Podcast, his name is Podcast. He does jiu-jitsu, boxing, mixed martial arts. He ran back punts. He has a podcast, and he plays the piano. Good job on that piano there.
I got it.
He's got it, all right? All right, we got more to talk about. I got to talk about trash talking in politics. How Democrats can learn a thing or two from the fighters of the world. Do you got an update before I go back to Sergio?
No.
Just promote the heck out of the Monday. Not now, but check out that Joanna Klonsky.
Oh, yeah. We have we do things on the weekends now. The Benny J bonus interviews, all right? Every weekend, we're going to try our darndest to provide you a bonus interview for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Saturday's interview, Ben talked one-on-one with his right-hand man from First Tuesdays at the Hideout, 1354 West Wabansia, the one, the only investigative journalist, Mick Dumpke. They talked, I believe, the 5 issues happening in the city of Chicago. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, on Sunday, Ben spoke one-on-one with David Ferris,
great interview.
Author of the It's Time to Fight Dirty, How Democrats Can Win the House Back, or something like that. But go check that book out. Ben loves David Ferris. And I think they like to talk about Nancy Pelosi quite a bit. Ben Joravsky loves Nancy Pelosi just almost as much as he loves candles. Almost as much. It's a fantastic, very learned interview with David Ferris. And on Monday, because, well, she's now the mayor, Lori Lightfoot was inaugurated yesterday, and Ben talked one-on-one with two of the people in the Lori Lightfoot campaign who helped make it happen, political strategist Joanna Klonsky and pollster Jason McGrath. They love talking, like Ben said, so it made for a great interview. Find out how Lori went from who to, oh, yeah, her, in this one-on-one Benny J bonus interview.
All right, thank you very much, D. Yes, indeed, great shows. All right, Sergio, we have a president of the United States who learned a thing or two from professional wrestling. I think at one point or another he's a wrestling promoter. And
he's in the WWE Hall of Fame.
I don't believe he is.
He actually was one of the original investors of the UFC also.
Yeah. Okay, so he has learned
I love fighting.
Just so good imitation.
Yeah, I thought the man was in the room with me.
Go look at my building.
Huge wrestling fan, Dennis.
Nice,
okay,
nice.
Professional wrestling. All right, and so he takes the lessons he's learned from the promotional aspect of wrestling and has put him to very good use in the game of politics, the political arena, constantly taunting and trash talking on Twitter. It's just straight up
He's a heel.
Yes.
He 100%, it's not even a heel turn. He's just the heel. He goes out there and he chooses, it almost reminds me of The Rock. Remember The Rock used to call everybody a nickname?
Yeah.
You're this, you're that, you're this.
Yeah.
He does the exact same thing. And then he continues to repeat it over. Oh, crazy Bernie. Oh, crazy this.
Yeah.
Oh, Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren. No, man, that is all he's doing. He's sitting there and taking catchphrases, repeating things over and over again that, I'm sorry to crush him like that, but his base, it's extra something simple that they can hold on to. They can repeat it. They can remember, make a little slogan and a chant out of it. They love it. It's something, and that's what he does. That's how he gets his followers, his following, his whatever you want to call it.
So how should Democrats combat it?
Well, this is one thing I'll say. I think Democrats, for instance, like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and people like that, obviously, Bernie Sanders, people, you need to speak up. The Conservative Party has always punched. They punch down, they punch up no matter where you are. They're going to talk trash. If you're right, if you're wrong, they're going to attack you in the media. They're going to attack you. The corporate Democrats, the Democrats who have tended to be in office, what they end up doing is they'll sit there and, let's the bipartisanship, let's play a game, let's do this together. Oh, it's okay, we're fine.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't need that. That doesn't win. So what does win? Actually, this is what you need to do. First and foremost, they state facts. And that's something that fighters tend to do a lot when they're actually sitting there talking trash to one another. Do a little research, but you state facts. Hey, you lost this event. Hey, I beat up this guy. Something that I can talk about. We can actually use that in politics. Hey, Donald Trump, you're talking about how great your income policy, your tax policies and everything are. Well, let's look at the rural communities. They're not doing well right now. Talk about it. Highlight those things. If people highlight what's actually going on, then you can combat the nonsense trash talk. And again, punch back. It doesn't make sense. Why? Well, we got to get along. It's okay. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Throw punches back, because I'm sure you've noticed it. I'm sure everyone in here has seen it when it happens. The moment you punch back, AOC does it all the time. Oh, my goodness. How dare you? I do declare. Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. Why were you talking to me like that?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, I'm supposed to be the snowflake, but the moment we say something back, they're the ones that are actually running backwards. Who's the real snowflake? Let's be honest. So that's how you combat those type of things. And again, take the WWE tactics, but do it that much more intelligent. Actually utilize facts, utilize figures, and then just show them what they're doing. Hey, Don, look, bro, Teflon Don, this is what you've done.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you this. So should the Democrats give him a nickname? He came at Elizabeth Warren, called her Pocahontas. and was mocking her for claiming that she has.
Call him Corrupt Donald. Call him,
give him a
nickname. Corrupt Donald. Mr. Money Laundering. You know, do those type of things that we're reiterating things that are already happening.
Should you make fun of his physical appearance? Should you call that comb over Don or something like that?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, take unfortunately out of it. Like in wrestling, would they make fun of his comb over?
You know what people hold on to? Because I'm going to be honest with you. Do you know what would make Bernie Sanders, everyone would love Bernie Sanders? If Bernie Sanders got jacked, got a little propecia, grew a little bit this out a little bit more, you know, and was sitting there and then grew out a beard, people would love Bernie Sanders. He'd be like, he is America's guy. Look at him. Yeah. He wants health care for all, and look how he's you know.
I can't imagine that, but whatever.
He hunts, you know, whatever. But that's the type of thing that people want to see. People love it. I mean, look at the culture that we're in. Mm-hmm. We love drama. How many, you know, sister wives shows or whatever on television right now? That is the type of things that people enjoy. Donald Trump, his base, and unfortunately, a lot of people in this country, we gravitate towards drama. We gravitate towards the simplicity of name calling. We can remember that. That's us going back to middle school. How many of us used to sit at the table as kids and just talk trash back and forth amongst one another?
Yeah.
That's something that happened. So it's something that we could all relate to. It is simplistic in nature. That's why we should do it right back.
All right, now, Donald Trump is very proud of the fact, in his humble opinion, that he put Elizabeth.
Humble. I'm gonna throw air quotes again up that humble.
Humble in air quotes. That he put Elizabeth Warren in the defensive. I've been thinking about this for a while. When he slapped her with the nickname Pocahontas, and then she responded by having a DNA test, and that hurt her.
It did.
It clearly hurt her.
It did.
When you look back, now it's Monday morning quarterback. I understand it's after the fact, but if you could apply the lessons you've learned from the games that you followed, the fighting that you followed, in your humble opinion,
of course,
what strategy should Elizabeth Warren followed how should she responded to the taunts and the nickname of Donald Trump?
Facts. All facts. But one thing Elizabeth Warren does better than I believe any other politician right now in Washington is her policies. She writes incredible policies. What she should have focused on, not going out there and having beer with her husband because that looks corny, not doing what other saying, hey, look, I'm 0.2%, you know, Native American. What she should have said is, you could have that, but check this out. This is what I'm focusing on. This is what's important.
Do you think Americans who are so, when you look at Americans who respond so viscerally to Donald Trump's nicknames, the ratings went up for 2016 when the Republicans had their debate. Mainly Donald Trump was reality TV brought into politics.
That's what he is. He's a reality TV host.
So do you think, given the fact that he proved to be so popular as a political figure, do you think that Americans would respond to facts, to policies? Do you think that Americans would be a little like Homer Simpson and go, boring?
It depends on who's delivering that message. If you sit there and actually find somebody who is engaged, because let's be honest, who's right now engaging, popular, people are following what she's saying? AOC. All she's doing is laying out facts and figures, and she's standing up for what she believes is right. And with the more you do that, and you have a snappy comeback or two from time to time, people will follow you. All she's doing, and this is what happens when you actually get not the elite there, you have regular, everyday people who actually get elected to government. It almost reminds me of Game of Thrones this week. People are, you know, all bent out of shape, whatever. Actually, you know what? Let me just stop. I was about to give a spoiler. I don't feel like getting beat up on here.
I don't think anybody in this room has ever seen a Game of Thrones. Have you ever seen Game of Thrones, Lee? 2 episodes.
Really?
I've never seen any episodes.
Dude, I saw one, and it was the final one a few days ago.
You watched the final one?
Yeah.
That's like I got a 500-page novel. I'm just going to read the last 2 pages.
Well, but yes, that's how I feel about that one. I mean, I think we need to sit there, be candid, state facts and figures, but you can have a little snappy comeback or two.
All right, let me ask you this. People in the fight game, did they tend to be Republican, Democrat, or do they have no politics?
It depends. I mean, I think it's just like America. People come from different places. People think about and have different values. You have it all over the place. Dana White, who is the most upfront figure in the sport right now, he's a staunch Republican. He's a friend of Donald Trump. But when you look at the bulk of his athletes, they don't feel that way. But again, it represents America. You have some guys who are Republicans. You have some guys who are Democrats. Some guys who are indifferent. And girls.
Sergio Vicente is his name. And Sergio, tell folks a little bit about your podcast before I let you get out the door.
Absolutely. So I am the host of the Fight Podcast. We're a combat sports and culture podcast. What we do is we go ahead and we break down all of the major combat sports events, MMA, boxing, kickboxing. We have interviews with fantastic world-class athletes, media personalities, influencers, all involving the sport, coaches as well. I've had some of the best, some of the top kickboxers in the world, some of the biggest MMA prospects in the world, all coming on the show. And that is a weekly show that we do. We end up pumping out about 4 episodes weekly.
All right, very good. And he also follows politics closely, probably bringing back, talk more about how the Democrats can fight tough against Donald Trump, use some of the tricks of the trade that you've learned over the years in the fight game. All right, Sergio? Sounds good. All right, I want to thank Sergio Vicente very much for coming in. Also want to thank Stephanie Zimmerman.
And really quick, I'm sorry. I'd be remiss to mention Sage Eats. I dropped you off a meal as well. Sage Eats, we are a healthy meal prep company. We cook and deliver healthy meals, and they're 100% customizable. We drop directly to our client's home or office here in the Chicagoland area. All
right, very good. Man is a renaissance man. He does a lot of different things.
That looks good.
Yeah, he's Dennis ready to eat it. Thanks, Stephanie Zimmerman from the Chicago Sun-Times, Atiba Buchanan, and David Seaton. Leah, our staff editor, did a magnificent job. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend behind the boards. Oh, yeah, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. You know what they call him down in Alton, Sergio? They call him White Lightning. Yes.
Hey, no, they don't. No one calls me that.
The ladies all love him for his body and his mind. Yes, indeed. Dr. D, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com/Joravsky, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I don't know if we're on Spotify. I got to check that. But hey, go check it out. Find us online and at Benny J Show on both Twitter and Facebook.